Welcome back again, everybody, and it's my number 21 team in the power rankings for my 2026 NFL Deep Dive Series, the Cincinnati Bengals. And wow, talk about a team that has just been an utter disappointment. Now, they've almost been like this. Every year, everyone's like, oh, Cincinnati, because they got a great quarterback. They probably have the best quarterback in the league. They probably got the best receiver in the league. They got probably the best number 2 wide receiver 2 in the league. It's unfathomable that they've gotten to the Super Bowl that one time and haven't remotely looked like a team that could sniff it since. Horrifically prepared at the beginning of the season. So a horrific offseason programming. We'll get to that coaching staff shortly. Don't you guys worry. An offensive line that is just unbecoming of quality for the number 1 quarterback in terms of overall talent, in my opinion, spoiler alert, in the entire league. A decent running game. They've done a good job of getting Chase Brown in there. A defensive line that, they lost Trey Hendrickson. They lost Joseph Osai. They brought in Boye Mafe. They brought in Dexter Lawrence from the New York Giants, which was a huge pickup. If he can get back to where he was at his peak with the Giants, you guys got a juggernaut out there. This guy was above and beyond a great talent. As a Giants fan, it really hurts to lose him. But thanks for the number 10 overall pick, I guess. Where we got Francis, I guess, whatever. We'll get to that. An absolutely baffling, horrific linebacking group that we'll get to. Very inexperienced. 2 mid-draft rounded rookies out there. Demetrius Knight, Barrett Carter. Surprised they didn't address that position group in the draft. A lot of faith being put in these 2 young guys who didn't really show a whole lot in their rookie seasons. But a great corner in DJ Turner. An emerging Dax Hill, who when he plays on the outside has actually been quite good. But they have this whole thing about trying to play him everywhere. Just play him on the outside. We'll get to that. They brought in Brian Cook to play safety. It's an interesting group that is just really dragged down by how poorly prepared they are, and that falls directly on this coaching staff led by Zach Taylor. So let's talk about Zach Taylor he is in fact my last ranked head coach in the entire league. And there has never been a head coach outside of that Super Bowl year. They've underachieved. They couldn't get over the hump. They got over the hump. They lost in the Super Bowl. And it's like, this is a team that should have been a perennial AFC championship. They should have been what the Chiefs have been for all this time. With the amount of talent they have on the one side of the ball, they've just been so terribly coached. And the roster building has been a little bit conspicuous, but they still have great talent all over their roster. But they're so incredibly unprepared over the summer. They start seasons horrifically. Let's just run through some of Zach Taylor's last couple of years. At the start of the year, last season they won the first 2 games. They beat Cleveland 17-16, and then they beat Jacksonville 31-27. 2 close games. They followed that up by getting blown out by Minnesota 48-10 and blown out by Denver 28-3. They then lost to Detroit, 37-24. They then lost to Green Bay, 27-18. They lost to the Jets 2 weeks after that, 39-38. What is that? Then the season before that, they lose to the Patriots week 1. They lose to the Chiefs week 2. They lose to Washington week 3. They lose to Baltimore week 5. And it's like what a horrific start to 2024. Going back to 2023, week 1, they lose 24-3 to Cleveland to start the season. They lose 27-24 to Baltimore. And they lose 27-3 to Cincinnati. Or to Tennessee, excuse me. What? It's unbelievable. The year before that, they lose to Pittsburgh week 1. They lose to Dallas week 2. They lose to Baltimore in week 5. And the wins they had there were the Jets and the Dolphins. Like, the consistency of being absolutely terrible in the first month and a half of the season for the last however long Zach Taylor's been the head coach. That is a sign of a team that is entering the regular season completely unprepared from training camp. That's a terrible offseason program that they seemingly just won't change. And then you have a team that's unprepared, a team that is somehow lacking chemistry on both sides of the ball. And what happens? You get your quarterback killed. You have an offensive line that can't perform. You have a defensive line that can't stop the run. And I know he's an offensive coach, but all this stuff falls on him. You know, he has Dan Pitcher as his offensive coordinator here. They get tier 4 offensive coaching. Dan Pitcher, you know, they run that modern West Coast 11 personnel with some pre-snap motion. They love the zone blocking, the quick passing game. They want to take those explosive shot plays down the field, mostly off of play action. And, you know, the offense is functional for most of the season. The offense inevitably does get going. And it's had even some really good moments, even with Burrow out. You know, Jake Browning had a hell of a run there a couple of years back. You know, Joe Flacco has come in and done decent. But it's like, why are you putting yourselves constantly in this situation where the offense then has to just be this juggernaut every single week? Or else it's just pure failure. You have too much talent there. And even with a decently established running game we'll get to with Chase Brown, you know, there's talks of Alvin Kamara now coming in the offseason sometime this summer. It hasn't happened yet as of this recording, but there are the rumors going around that Kamara could be coming in and assisting this offense. You add that and you add that dynamic into this offense, like, there's no excuse why you're not winning 12, 13 games a year, but you have to come into the season prepared so then that way you don't get Joe Burrow killed every week. But a lot of this also has to fall on the defense. He went from Lou Anarumo to Al Golden. You know, Lou Anarumo didn't have a whole lot of success. Al Golden came in and somehow had even less last season. He gets to come in here second year with the team. 4-2-5 base formations. His whole thing is they don't even, like, when they changed to a more aggressive style, a more aggressive philosophy, I think we started to see a little bit more defensive success from them. And then I think it became a lot more of them just not having the talent on the other side of the ball, which is why I think they got so aggressive with the additions they had in the offseason. But when you're a team that's focused on preventing big plays and tackling fundamentals, but you're playing such light boxes, that's why they were so vulnerable against the run, because their linebacking was weak. Their interior defensive line was inconsistent outside of B.J. Hill. That's why you add Dexter Lawrence and you give up a top 10 pick in the draft to do that. So maybe now they can, with having all these extra pieces now up the middle of the field, they can maybe pull off what Al Golden wants to do, which is just keep everything in front of you, you know, play solid run defense, and just eventually force the opposing offense to make some sort of a mistake, get them behind schedule at some point, either on first or second down, and just make sure that you have fundamental tackling and your sure tacklers and all that. But these are all things that aren't necessarily features of what this roster has right now. And there's been nothing about Al Golden that's told me that he's anything other than in the very bottom tier, the tier 6 of defensive coaches. And this is inevitably what drags this team completely down, drags them completely out. And it really makes me wonder how Zach Taylor has just maintained this job when there is this pattern of unpreparedness and underachieving. Like, you can only live off of a Super Bowl appearance for so long until you have to admit that the way that you're doing things is actually a detriment to the success of the football team. And I think that's what we have here. And this is what is taking what should be, as we're going to get to shortly, what should be a top 10 NFL team into not even inside the top 20 in a deep dive power ranking. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up, even if you disagree with me. It's the best thing for the algorithm, best thing for the growth of my channel. I really appreciate it. Racing to that 1,000 subscribers. This is a lot of work, and I appreciate you guys sticking around. And now you're going to stick around to talk about the players, which is a completely different narrative than what you guys just heard with the coaching staff, because we're starting with the quarterback. And Joe Burrow is my #1 quarterback in the entire league, which makes this even more infuriating as we're going to get through a lot of these roster guys, like we said during the coaching segment. Joe Burrow came into the league a shining star in his final year at LSU. Didn't have like this great arm strength or anything, but the arm talent of being able to put the ball wherever he wants in any situation, really any distance down the field, really shine through. And then when he comes to the NFL, that was able to translate very well. Especially once he got with the combination of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And even last season, Joe Burrow, he was 4th in big time throws, so he's still putting the ball down the field, and he was 1st in turnover worthy plays percentage. So he was putting that ball downfield. He was taking chances, but he wasn't taking them frivolously where he was putting the ball in harm's way at all. So the efficiency of what he was doing last year was fantastic. He was the best quarterback when facing pressure. He was 2nd when facing 4 or less rushers. He was 4th when he was kept clean. He was 5th when he was blitzed. From a distance standpoint, from 20 yards plus down the field, he was the 7th graded quarterback out of 42 eligible quarterbacks. From 10 to 19 yards, he was #1 in the league. And that is the area of the field where, if you're going to have a lot of success as an NFL team in the modern NFL, that's where you need to have your success. It's that 11 to 19 yard range across left to right and middle and all that. And he did that better than anybody last year. In the short areas, he was 16th, but under 9 yards, you're just, mostly that's when you're facing a lot of press man coverage and all that. So it makes the windows a lot tighter. It makes things a lot more precise. And this is also an offense that was looking to take those shots down the field, like we said earlier. But when Burrow's able to put the ball on so many different guys, and he's able to use all the different players while also focusing on getting his top talent the ball, understanding that situationally, no matter really what's going on right now, this is the time where I get the ball to Jamar. This is the time where I get the ball to Higgins. This is the time where I need to check down maybe. This is the time where I need to get the ball out. But him playing with this level of confidence, given the struggles of the offensive line in particular that's been in front of him for all these years, not having like a truly great offensive line ever, it speaks to what can happen if you build that around him, if you give that final pieces of the puzzle to him on the offensive line. And I don't know that there's been really a true commitment to giving Joe Burrow that. It's been a lot of veteran stuff. They added Amarius Mims, who we'll get to eventually in this. But when Burrow is given the ball, no matter the situation, there isn't a more surefire confidence that you can have in somebody out of all the quarterbacks in the league that he's going to make the right decision, make the right play. The injuries are obviously of a concern because he's been injured a lot in his NFL career, but there's also the idea of that lack of preparation, lack of situational coaching, and lack of offensive line development have been the deciding inevitable factors in that. So I do wonder if this season goes terribly wrong, what they do from a coaching perspective and what they do with a Joe Burrow perspective. Like, is Joe Burrow going to continue to sit around here and deal with this while he's there watching other quarterbacks of his caliber, of his tier, not from a weapons perspective, but from just, I think, an overall team building perspective, getting a heck of a lot more help for them than he's getting here. How him and Zach Taylor get back to where they were, the Super Bowl year, the AFC Championship year before that, like how they get back to that, I wonder if it's possible for them to get back to that. Or is it just so inevitably broken that you just got to move on from one? And you got to sort of part ways and get a new voice in there for Burrow if you want Burrow to stick around. Or is it just so gone that both of them are not long for this world here in Cincinnati? That would be tragic for this roster, tragic for this organization. But keep going back to the injury here. A good way to prevent a quarterback from just having guys pin their ears back and going and trying to destroy the guy is you have a good play action game, and they were 27th in play action last year. It was 27th of 45, and that comes from a team's just not respecting the run in a lot of situations. That also could come from just not the greatest times to be, or greatest situations to be calling a play action play. Where the defense just doesn't even care, where they're committed to stopping the pass so much, and they're relying on the interior defensive line, their linebackers reading and reacting, just take out the running attack. That's another reason why, Chase Brown won't come in as high as he is, but Joe Burrow does, in a lot of ways, make things a lot better because of how poor the offensive line is. He's still able to put up amazing numbers, still put up great performances, still is able to get the ball down the field 20 yards without getting just absolutely destroyed every single time, though it's a lot of the time. So how much more is expected to be put on the shoulders of this guy to compensate for what's lacking around him, both on and off the field? I think getting him a backup like Joe Flacco is incredibly beneficial. I think Flacco does have a lot of wisdom. I think Flacco also played on some Baltimore teams in particular where the offenses weren't all that great. Had some pieces for sure, but I think he learned how to navigate around things. I think he learned how to be a game manager and not feel like he always had to carry the load because he didn't necessarily have to. So being able to come in with a different perspective for Joe Burrow as sort of like that second quarterback coach that a backup quarterback is really supposed to be, I think that's incredibly better. And then there is the times where you have to account for the fact that Burrow might get hurt and you need somebody that can come and be a Band-Aid for a game or two. And Flacco, I think, gives you a lot of confidence in that because I think he's proven over the last couple of years that his floor is at least high enough where your team is not going to be, drowning in the ocean of woe is me because your quarterback is out and now you're just trying to not lose out while your actual starter isn't there. Flacco can actually keep you in games, maybe win you a couple, but you need more help around them also. You need better coaching in those situations, which obviously the Bengals just don't have. Now with the weapons group, they are 7th to 10th in weapons group for their overall weapons in the passing game, and it's led by probably the best 1-2 punch in the entire league. Really, inevitably, with the number one wide receiver. Now, some people say it's Justin Jefferson. For me, it's Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the entire league. Just last season, 182 targets, had 125 catches. Of 32 eligible receivers, he was 15th in drops percentage, 8th in contested catch percentage, 1,412 yards receiving, 648 yards after the catch, 8 touchdowns, which was down from his epic season the year before. All this is down from his epic year just prior. But how do you replicate that on any type of consistent basis? That's really unfair to say. From a deep ball perspective, he was 29th out of 40. In the intermediate area, 7th out of 33. In the short areas, 4th out of 22. So in that 1 to 19 yard range, he's just incredibly dominant. And especially in the intermediate range where Joe Burrow really shines, that's where a lot of their work gets done, a lot of the damage gets done against opposing defenses. He was 16th of 29 receivers versus man, 5th against zone. So that's just IQ at that point. When you have receivers do really well against zone, it speaks to IQ and chemistry a lot between quarterback and wide receiver. IQ of the receiver, chemistry between the quarterback and receiver. Because you're mostly looking for the soft spots in the zone, especially when Chase does those drag routes from the slot, where, by the way, he was 4th in the NFL out of 70 eligible receivers out of the slot. When he does those drag routes, you don't want to just run yourself into coverage, which we see some of the more inexperienced receivers do in those scenarios where it's like, I'm running a drag route and I'm gone. Chase has such great situational awareness and chemistry with Burrow that he's able to cross over a couple of the zones that they see and then knows exactly where to sit, where it's not congesting with another wide receiver. So we'll see that a lot out of this offense, where they're able to do that, those deep crossers right over top of the linebackers, underneath the safeties, while running T. Higgins on some outside release on the receiver on the opposite side that turns that cornerback away. That doesn't allow him to make the play then on Ja'Marr Chase as he comes across into sort of the opposite hash marks. And Chase's versatility, we talked about the 4th in the slot, him taking really a third of his snaps out of the slot, that creates such nightmares for mismatches and all that. And it really forces teams, particularly in the division, to have to put really great corners in the slot, where some of their best corners are not necessarily made to play in the slot. They don't have the physicality, they don't have the size, they don't have the run capabilities. So you can actually play Ja'Marr Chase in there. You drag in a outside corner who great on the outside but has no run support capabilities, and then you can maybe run the ball on opposing defenses a little bit more by doing that. And if not, you inevitably create mismatches where you can have to have these corners pass off routes, stick into man coverage, have to force themselves into a zone, which makes things a lot easier for Chase to execute, and Burrow makes it easier throws, and opens up huge opportunities for someone like T. Higgins or like an Andrea Yoshivas or Mitchell Tinsley they have out there. They drafted Colby Young. They have Charlie Jones there still. But the other one is T. Higgins, who is a completely different type of wide receiver than what you get in Ja'Marr Chase. Like 87% of T. Higgins' snaps come from the outside. He had 98 targets last year, 59 catches. He was 8th in drops percentage out of 32, 18th in contested catch. Got a lot of contested catch opportunities, especially deep down the field. And deep down the field, he was the number 1 graded wide receiver in the NFL. Deep down the field, which is the exact thing you want T. Higgins to be, this big body, deep threat wide receiver. He's not going to get you a lot of yards after the catch. He only had 164 out of 846 yards total. But he did have 11 touchdowns. He got gradually graded out worse as he got closer to the line of scrimmage, but still 12th in the intermediate areas, which is such a great place for him to be, because a guy of his size, 10 plus yards down the field is where so much of what he's going to do so much of what he is expected to do in an offense is going to happen, because he's not going to be like this great route runner that's going to dazzle you the way Ja'Marr Chase would. His is a lot of just a physical game, using his strength, using his catch radius, and he does that incredibly well. He was also number 2 in the NFL versus man coverage. He was 28th of 29th against zone, but like we just talked about with Ja'Marr Chase, Higgins' role is a lot of down the field stuff, a lot of deep go routes with some comebacks, some hook routes, some hitches, some those deep ins, those deep outs, executing again, catch radius, the deep posts, all that, because he's not going to dazzle you with the speed. His thing is the physical size, and that's why this complement of the number 1 and number 2 guys works out so incredibly well. I know there was a talk about T. Higgins wanting to leave and be a number 1 receiver. Inevitably kind of got paid as close to 1 as you could get to stay in Cincinnati. But I think that his role with the team, I think it just suits having a guy like Jamar Chase next to him. It opens up the opportunities for him to be great. And I don't know that if he was the true number one guy, where he was the number one focus of opposing defenses, that he would produce at the high level that he does here. Because going up against a team's number 2 corner with not a lot of over the top help, unless they just run a flat out cover 2 shell, and then you just exploit that by running crossing routes and underneath them. He's doing a lot of this work one-on-one, which is why being grading out second against man coverage and number 1 deep down the field, a lot of that is done in one-on-one. So when you get those one-on-one opportunities with T. Higgins, you're going to take them, and he's going to be able to execute for you at such an incredibly high level. The one thing that this team is really just kind of lacking is who that number 3 wide receiver is. Now, you could argue that it's Mike Gesicki, who is mostly a slot guy anyway, but, is still a quote-unquote tight end. But we'll see Drew Sample appear ahead of him in the depth chart for tight end, because Gesicki's most of Gesicki's role is playing in the slot. So you'll see him and Drew Sample on the field at the same time quite often. But then if they want to get a little bit more speed out there, that's when you'll see Andre Yoshivas, who probably should be getting a little more opportunities out there, you would hope. Him and Mitchell Tinsley and Colby Young and Charlie Jones, there's a huge competition there seemingly every offseason that they've all been on the team together for who gets those snaps. A sneaky good draft pick was Jake Endries, the tight end. I like him to sort of maybe start stealing some tight end snaps inevitably throughout the season. I also don't mind Chase Brown out of the backfield. Him and Samaje Perine, I think, are decent running backs in passing situations, both from a blocking perspective, being able to stay in and help protect, which, given the struggles of the offensive line, is going to probably be more often than not. You'd almost like for it to be at this point. But they're also good at, getting out there in space, sure hands, and then getting down the field and getting some yards as sort of that outlet wide receiver for the quarterback. But inevitably, this group is very capable of being number 1. They have all the pieces to be number 1. It's just a matter of them finding that other option, that thing that just takes them even that little extra hump over and gets them into that top 5 area. Because if you get a great production out of Yoshivas, and it's not always about, how many targets they get, how many catches they get. It's about how they execute on the play. Are they convincing? Are they running the route like they're the ones getting the ball? Even though they know it's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and probably Mike Gesicki are the higher ones on the thing, that they're probably the 4th read on any play. They go out there, they run that route. The defense has to respect it, really, at the end of the day. The defense can't just let the guy go. And how do they execute against these lower end corners on the depth chart? Right? And so we need to see that from these guys when they get their opportunities, and then that'll inevitably raise things up and open things up even more for this passing game. Now, as we get to the running back room, they're pretty much right in the middle with Chase Brown. They're 15th to 18th, depending on, it's like a pick your poison type thing between Chase Brown and a couple others. I think Samaje Perine's a decent backup. I think that he has his ups and downs as well. I think there's some weeks he's like, oh man, this guy's like the best backup running back in the league. And then other weeks you're like, that's why he's a backup type of thing. And so he's not a whole lot of competition for the number 2 running back role with Taj Brooks and Gary Brightwell there. They're mostly just running back 3, running back 4 special teams guys. But Chase Brown, they had a really balanced run game last year, 112 zone runs to 106 gap runs. He had 4.4 yards a carry, which is just about what you want from a starting caliber running back, 1,019 yards in total. 711 yards after contact. So he only ran 400 yards without contact the entire season, before first contact. 46 missed tackles forced. He put the ball on the ground twice, had 6 touchdowns. He had 9 explosive runs, accounted for 52 first downs. He's a good back. He is a good back. He's not the guy who's going to take over a game for you. He's the 4.4 yards per carry guy, consistent. You're going to hand him the ball, he's going to get you what you need in that situation. He's not Bijan, he's not Christian McCaffrey where you can put the game on his shoulders by any means. He is the perfect running back for for an offense that's really good everywhere else. For an offense that executes really well in the passing game and needs a running game to be serviceable and that can help put a game away after the passing game does the work that they're supposed to do. And that's what Chase Brown is very, very capable of doing. The unfortunate nature of it is that this team finds themselves in shootouts so often because of how bad the defense was that it lessens his opportunities. Now, it can open up a lot of lighter boxes for him, which is why 218 carries is fine. But I'm sure you can find him 30 more carries throughout the season when you're facing a lot of these lighter boxes. I think you just got to be ahead of schedule. Those second and mediums, I think, would be a great opportunity for him to really start trying to take advantage of lighter boxes that this team would inevitably face with the guys they have playing on the outside. And I think that will open up for more production from him as well. And when you get into the red areas and all that, you face bigger boxes, that's when you want to have the run game well established and well respected so you can work some of those play actions inside the 20-yard line of the opponent. And that is what's really lacking here. Like we said, they were 27th in play action. And so where are they executing these play actions? At what points are they establishing the run throughout the game for the play actions to work? That all goes back to, again, weekly preparation, summer preparation, preseason preparation, in-game adjustments, et cetera, that just isn't coming their way. So he's just inevitably another guy who potentially is being held down a little bit production-wise by what is happening around him on the sidelines. So I think he can do it. I think that in the perfect world, he's a 1,250-yard rushing season with 10 touchdowns. And then Joe Burrow, 30-plus touchdowns, 4,000 yards, and that's what your offense looks like. They just need to get to a place as a complete all-around organization where they can pull that off, that type of balance off a little bit more effectively than what they have been. So we're here with the inevitable problem of this offense, which is the offensive line. And they come in 13th to 18th in pass blocking, which... man, we'll get to the tackles. Inevitably, the tackles are the deciding factor. The pass blocking is really propped up by what they have going on in the interior with Karras and Dalton Risner. And Dalton Risner is not even a guaranteed starter here at his age, at this stage in his career. But they're dead last in run blocking, and it's dead last by a while. It's a significant dead last. And, we'll start with Orlando Brown, who's the starting left tackle again this year. Took over 1,000 snaps as their left tackle last season. And was pretty much what he's been since he left Baltimore, which is just a trending downwards player. 55th in pressures, gave up 9 sacks total. 46th in quarterback hurries. 60th out of 62 in quarterback hits. And that's really the story of Joe Burrow's life, isn't it? Your left tackle out of 62 eligible tackles is 60th in hits allowed. So he's just getting beat. He's just getting beat around the edge and somehow, some way just maintains his starting job. And they haven't even really made a true effort to even improve on this position. So I don't know what inevitably they see in him that he's executing this poorly in pass pro when that's really what his number one job should be for this team. He comes in 73 pass blocking grade. He was also 50th in penalties out of all eligible tackles. And then his run grade is 69, nice. But, 45th in zone blocking, 27th in gap. His size plays a huge role in his gap abilities. But when you run sort of a really balanced running attack the way that they have, he's not falling within the top 30 for run blocking amongst tackles, which is a problem. That makes him outside number one, like he's a number two tackle in terms of his run blocking ability. It's just, I don't understand the strategy here. I mean, just getting these big bodied guys like Orlando Brown out there just hasn't been working for them. Then you move over to his left, you got Dylan Fairchild coming into his second season. Had a decent outing as a rookie. Even though he's not as good as Dalton Risner, his job's probably a lot safer. But has to start improving. Has to take that next step in both pass pro and run blocking. He's got a really good center right next to him in Ted Karras, who's one of the better centers. In terms of against other centers in the league, the 32 guys, he was 16th in pressures allowed, only gave up 1 sack, 8th in hits. So the hits aren't coming from the center. At the very least, Joe Burrow can say that. 21st in hurries, so there was some type of penetration that comes up the A gaps that they were allowing last season. But also that comes from, did the slides help? Did Karras move over to the right guy? Did both of them need help? And he went to the one and the other one still didn't get the job done. 27th in zone blocking, 7th in gap. So they really do execute a lot better in the gap running game. So I do wonder if they're not inevitably going to run a more gap-oriented scheme coming up this year. Because when you are executing better, at the very least, between Brown and Karras so far, it makes me feel like you got to kind of lean on that and not necessarily just commit to that zone scheme just because that's the trends of the league. They did give up a lot of penalties, though. And it's Karras 27th in penalties after we just saw with Orlando Brown. So it's a lot of just penalties happening here. And most of the time when an offensive lineman is getting penalties, if they're getting in pass pro, it's a feet issue. So I wonder if Karras in those situations is just, not getting his feet underneath him, or if it's just a scramble because of what's going on inevitably next to him on either side. I think it could be a mixture of both, but I still think he's a high caliber pass protector. Then Dalton Risner, like we talked about, I don't know that his job is all that safe because they did draft Brian Parker II, who was my number 2 tackle in all the draft class. He's inevitably looking like he's moving to guard here at the professional level. But I think he's one of those guys, man, like if he gets on the field, if he gets an opportunity, I don't know that he loses the job. Like he gets the chance, they won't take him off. Because I think from a pass pro perspective, he's definitely better option on the interior than Fairchild is coming in. I think from a run blocking perspective, he's the best run blocker coming on to the entire offensive line. So inevitably, the value of him may be in that they might want to start him maybe over a Dalton Risner. You take a hit in the pass protection potentially, but you get a boost in run blocking because, Risner at his age, you wonder his age, his injury history and all that. You wonder if he's going to be somebody they want to commit to long term or if they don't want to just do Fairchild and Brian Parker. They also got Cody Ford, who's kind of like also a 6th offensive lineman. He can play guard, he can play tackle. Right now, he is the backup tackle. So I wonder if Brian Parker II doesn't get opportunities as a backup tackle as well throughout the summer in the preseason process. We'll check on that as we inevitably get into the month of August when preseason starts. And then you got Amarius Mims, former first-round pick, who didn't take a lot of penalties. Good on him. He was 8th in penalties allowed, but sort of the same story that you saw with Orlando Brown Jr., just slightly better, but playing on the right side, he's faced a lot of more favorable matchups. You know, he's 43rd in pressures, 46th in hurries, 24th in hits. So, like, they still can't find a tackle inside the top 20 in hits allowed and hurries allowed and pressures allowed. He was 42nd in zone blocking, zone run blocking, 28th in gap blocking. So, again, same sort of story that we saw with everyone else, is that they're a significantly better gap running team than a zone running team. And how your coaching staff doesn't identify this is beyond me. Why does Chase Brown have more zone runs than gap runs when you're so much better as an offensive line in gap? I don't get it, but whatever. I don't understand it. Amarius Mims, big body guy, good athlete, just needs the polishing. And inevitably, I think just needs better coaching to get to where he should be at this point in his career, where he should be trending upwards, because he sort of just doesn't seem to have that upwards trend feel to him. He sort of has this going to be stagnant as like this low-end starter, inevitably not get re-signed and be a backup somewhere else. Maybe a team will take a shot at him as a starter inevitably. But that's just what he's giving off now, because it just comes across incredibly stagnant from how they're coaching these guys. Needs to be better, and needs to be better all around. But when you just have this lack of upside of high-end talent here, because, Mims does have some upside, sure, but how much? Dylan Fairchild is like a mid-round pick, so you're hoping for best case scenario, maybe what you're getting in Dalton Reisner from a talent perspective. Not a lot of upside in Orlando Brown. Ted Karras is, getting older. Not a lot of ceiling left for him to fulfill. So you're really looking at where's your high-end offensive line commitment? Amarius Mims, a first-round pick. You paid a lot of money to Orlando Brown for some reason. What else? Nothing. There's really nothing else there. And that's what gives me so much concern for what this team is potentially going to become, and potentially again going to be this year, because they just didn't have the right priorities again. But inevitably, they're still the number one pass offense in the league, and that is Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins carrying a huge amount of the load. A middle-of-the-pack pass-blocking offensive line, solid on the interior, like we said, but they need better tackle play, or else Joe Burrow's not going to be on the field to make this the number one pass offense. 23rd in rush offense, dragged down huge by what they have or don't have on the offensive line again. 8th overall offense in totality. Tier 4 coaching. So the offensive line and the coaching are really what is dragging this team into what should easily be the number one offense in the league, into that number 8 spot. Now let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. Let's go to where the detriment of this team that couldn't really get it together but has some really good players in it. We'll start with a completely revamped defensive line here. And this defensive line got sneaky good this offseason. I got to give credit where it's due to this group. They added some really good pieces here to inevitably get this defensive line where it needs to be. Thought losing Trey Hendrickson was a huge hit. And I think they filled the spot really well. But they did it by like a committee of signings, right? So you get Boya Mafe, you get Jonathan Allen, you get Dexter Lawrence, you draft Cassius Howell in the second round. You have Shamar Stewart, who was a first-round pick last year. They did a really great job, and that's why they come in 11th to 15th in pass rush and 9th to 10th in run defense. A complete 180 from what you just had a year before, because I think they did a good job realizing what they were missing and what they needed. And it starts with Boya Mafe coming over from the defending champion Seattle Seahawks, who, again, not a great pass rusher. He's like what should be your number 2 pass rusher, but he's coming in getting paid like a number 1. He's the inevitably pushing him to be the number one pass rush guy. So a lot of these things have to improve this year. From a sack total, he was 58th. Pressures, 46 of 63. Win percentage, 36th. Hits, 59th. That really wasn't his wheelhouse, his game here. But from a run defense perspective, he was phenomenal last season. That's what he really brings over to this roster. His fourth in missed tackle percentage out of 63. 38th in stops percentage out of 127 edge rushers, edge players, whatever you want to call them. He did only take 555 snaps. We're going to see that be much higher. He's going to take 200 to 300 more snaps, which I think could open up more opportunities for him as a pass rusher as well. So we'll see how his athleticism, his play strength, and how he can incorporate some pass rush moves out of his tool belt to raise himself up this upcoming season, because he is going to be given all the opportunities in the world here to make that happen. They didn't just pay him to bring him in and be an early down run protector. And I do think he has the potential to be that. I think he found himself in that sort of edge by committee in Seattle through both regimes that he was there for, the McDonald and the Pete Carroll one. They always seem to have that edge by committee sort of thing. And he's maybe found himself in a similar situation, but I think from a team commitment standpoint, he's going to be at that 750 snap count by this time next year. They did bring in Cassius Howell to sort of be a compliment for him on the opposite side in pass rush situations. I think Cassius Howell could arguably be the best edge player on the team. I'm very, very high on him. Thought he should have been a first-round pick. The arm length is what really got to people, I think. Inevitably, I think that's a huge value, the optics of that. But I think it's a huge steal for them. Then you got Myles Murphy and Shamar Stewart, who I think are mostly in competition with each other to be the more traditional early down edge player on this team. Just Shamar Stewart was just a bummer. Didn't have any production in college and then didn't have any production in the pros. Surprise, surprise. And Myles Murphy's just sort of been a letdown. He was thought of so highly, had some down years, and never really got to that first round potential that I think that he had. When you move to the interior defensive line, you're moving to Dexter Lawrence, who down year last year, some injuries, upper body injuries that affected the play strength. But one of the best interior defensive linemen in the entire league. Last year, he had no sacks. But he was 5th in pass rush win percentage from a nose tackle role. And we all saw the numbers of most pressures from a nose tackle. Number 1 was Dexter Lawrence with 100 something. And then there was 7. And then number 2 was Vita Vea with 40. So he is a significantly superior nose tackle type who can play all 3 downs and can execute. The thing is that his production on the sexy stats, the sacks, the TFLs, it's inevitably going to be a very volatile stat line, because when you take 373 snaps from the A-gap out of 750 overall snaps, you're facing double teams constantly, and teams are running away from you. So you're not getting, stops and all that. You're not getting a lot of TFLs, because if you're running from the outside, you're getting double teamed on the inside. You ain't making that play, right? He was 16th in missed tackle percentage out of 90 interior defensive linemen, which is just phenomenal again, because once he gets his hands on you, it's over. He did take a lot of penalties last season, which was almost uncharacteristic of him. We'll see how that bounces back this year in a new environment, new defensive type. But he is the ultimate game changer for this defense, because he has the run stuffing ability of a top tier nose tackle and the pass rushing ability of a top-end 3-tech. So you can mix and match that all you want. You can mix him in with Jonathan Allen, and you can mix him in with B.J. Hill, and you can get two completely different types of production out of him. Like, B.J. Hill is a fantastic run defender. You can max him up with Dexter Lawrence, and you can sort of move those guys wherever you want. And then from a pass rush perspective, Jonathan Allen comes in. He's your 3-tech. He's your 4-eye tech. And then Dexter Lawrence is there eating up space in the middle. That inevitably gives all these guys way more space to operate. That's the value of Dexter Lawrence, is being a space eater that has to be respected as a legitimate top-tier pass rusher. And it opens up all these other opportunities. So we'll see twofold, really. We'll see how the Giants pass rushers respond without having him there for 750 snaps, and how the Cincinnati Bengals now will respond with now having him there for 750 plus snaps a season, you would hope, all health considered. And you'll see how a combination of him and B.J. Hill could work on the interior run defense and inevitably help this team when they want to play in these lighter boxes. And even in passing situations, Dexter Lawrence coming in and being there, it allows you also simultaneously to run those lighter boxes, quote unquote, because he's still there eating up all that space. If they try to catch him napping with like a dime package or whatnot, Dexter Lawrence will be out there on the field in a dime package because his pass rushing is so strong that he'll be able to supplement the draw game and all that they could be trying to sneak in there on the Bengals defense that teams did with so much more success just a year and 2 years prior. From a depth perspective, TJ Slayton is going to be your backup to Dexter Lawrence. And then Chris Jenkins is going to be your situational guy who comes in as a rotational piece for Hill or Jonathan Allen, however they want to go about that. He does feel like the odd one out in this scenario, however, with the addition of Jonathan Allen and Dexter Lawrence. But from an overall group perspective, as a unit, I think they all really complement each other well. And this could be a very, very successful group in all situations coming up this season. Now let's go to the linebackers, and holy crap is this linebacking group bad. They are 32nd in coverage and 30th to 32nd in run defense. 2 second-year players here with no depth really behind them to speak of. This is a lot of pressure for development here on these two guys, on Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter. Neither one is very good in coverage, and neither are really that true number one linebacker. Like, Demetrius Knight's probably like the ideal linebacker 3, and Barrett Carter's sort of in that same range, just slightly not as good in run defense. This is a huge wild card for this defense, because this is a group that inevitably has the spotlight on it for where's the development coming from. Because the commitment is to these two guys. When they got rid of Logan Wilson, it was because they were committing to the 2 linebackers they drafted. Warren Burks is not going to be a guy you want to start. He's going to be the special teams guy. He's going to be linebacker 3. Shaka Hayward, Joe Giles Harris, like these are special teamers at best. So you've dealt these cards out for yourselves. Now you need to really, really count on that linebacking coaching and Al Golden putting these guys in positions to succeed. I think inevitably something that really is going to work in their favor is what we just discussed with what they have up front, particularly down the middle of the defensive line, with Jonathan Allen, Dexter Lawrence, B.J. Hill, Chris Jenkins, T.J. Slayton. Those are some big boys with a lot of skill, a lot of experience, and are inevitably going to clog up the middle and make the job for the linebackers a lot easier. They're not going to get single man blocking on that defensive line, so it's going to open up opportunities when inevitably they're double teaming Dexter Lawrence, and it's going to give them free running lanes. It's up to them to understand the situation, understand what's happening in front of them, understand what the offense is trying to do in those situations, inevitably in the running game, I would say more than anything else, and fill the gap at the right time. Have the good reaction skills. Trust their reads. Play with some instincts, but also have the study down. Because one of these guys is going to be a green dot. One of these guys is going to be the one directing traffic there from that middle linebacker spot. So who's it going to be? I think you just got to throw it out there and be like, one of you guys has to break out. But this could be the inevitable downfall of the run defense if that interior defensive line doesn't really step up in a huge way. Then it'll be all for naught because the linebackers aren't going to be able to fill the need that is required. Now, from a pass pro perspective, just don't suck, I guess, has got to be the message here. Just keep everything in front of you. The Al Golden perspective, keep everything in front of you. And just make sure to be a sure tackler. Work on the tackling fundamentals. And when you have also simultaneously a great interior pass rush, like what they're probably going to have between Jonathan Allen, Dexter Lawrence, and B.J. Hill, it will inevitably stop offenses from throwing the ball in that middle of the field at the linebacker level. It's going to push the offense to have to execute outside the hashes, which could also play into helping a lesser talented linebacking coverage group from getting overexposed throughout the year. So not a whole lot from an individual basis here because there just hasn't been a whole lot individually shown by either one of these guys, by any of the guys in this linebacker group. It's just about this being the year somebody needs to step up, execute, and be the breakout, be like, that's a starting caliber linebacker in the NFL. Because they just don't have that currently as you can look at it today. Now at the defensive backs, they're 25th to 29th in coverage with tier 4 run defense. It's a up and down group here. Like, they have some really good players and then they just got a bunch of question marks coming around. But we'll start with DJ Turner, who had his breakout last year as a great outside corner. Took 900 snaps from the outside. He was 11th of 74 corners in man coverage, 29th of 74 in zone. He was 4th in completion percentage allowed. He was number 1 in forced incompletions. He had 2 interceptions, which is but he also had 13 pass breakups. That was good enough for number 2 in the league. Was 20th of 74 in passer rating allowed. So it was a true breakout season for him. It got him up to this level, up to that next level of corner where you go, this guy is definitely starting caliber, low end number 1 for now. If he can follow up with another year like this, I think with a better pass rush, a better defensive line in front of him, it's very possible. So we'll see how he bounces back now, because now offenses are going to be accounting for him. They're going to be taking him seriously as a number 1 guy. So we'll see how this all inevitably works out for him this upcoming year. But I'm going in with a lot of confidence in DJ Turner. From a speed perspective, the one thing you usually get, and his size does affect his physicality. He does get an F grade in his run defense. Not good, but that's why you keep on the outside. He only takes 40 slot snaps because those 40 snaps were the only ones that were absolutely necessary for him to take, and there was no other way around it. But not being able to play like physical at the line of scrimmage, but it does allow him to use his athleticism, use that speed that he wowed people with in the pre-draft process a couple years ago. And it does allow him to keep up with a lot of these wide receivers. Now, when he gets into playing against some of the bigger wide receivers, especially in the division, like a DK Metcalf, now you got Michael Pittman out there, so it's kind of inevitably, you can't avoid it in Pittsburgh. He does match up a lot better against some of the smaller guys, like a Jerry Jeudy and like Zay Flowers and whatnot. I like those matchups a lot more. It will be a struggle when he gets into some of those bigger bodied guys, but still a great player. Now, other than him, what do you have going on in this cornerback room? Now you have Dax Hill, who drafted as a safety, Never really worked as a safety. Then went to play in the slot. Never worked as a slot. The only time Dax Hill is really performing at a high level is when he's playing on the outside. So hopefully, Dax Hill will be like this great outside corner this upcoming season for you. That would be fantastic. And then you just got to figure out what you have going on in the slot here, whether it's Jalen Davis or Takario Davis, who you drafted out of Arizona. Josh Newton is still out there on the team. You almost maybe want to be Takario Davis because he is the better, more physical run defender than what you have in Jalen Davis. And then you get to the safety group, and they have Jordan Battle, who was really good and then kind of started to taper off a little bit. But then you have Brian Cook, who you bring in from Kansas City, and he's the guy you bring in to be that center field safety while you move everyone else around. You want to play some two shell. You want to keep everything in front of you, but you also, if you want to play a heavier box, move Jordan Battle up, for example. Then Brian Cook is the ideal guy to have as your free safety, and he's also pretty damn good in run defense as well. So if something gets past that second level, he's actually a sure-handed guy to bring the runner down. He did have 64 tackles last year, 21 assists. He was 19th in completion percentage allowed out of 66 safeties, 5th in forced incompletions, only allowed 182 yards on 21 catches allowed. So less than 10 yards, that's keeping everything in front of you. That's playing aggressive at the point of attack when you're out there in man coverage, in particular with a tight end or chasing around a running back or a slot guy. He did take 102 slot snaps, 258 box snaps, so working those slot receivers and those tight ends. Didn't do bad at all. Overall grade was 30th in the slot. But it was like one of those up and down type of things. But also when you have a safety coming down and playing in the slot, and he's not a traditional slot guy, in coverage in particular, you'll see some struggles depending on what the matchup is. But what you want him to do is play deep in the back. He had 6 pass breakups. That was 4th amongst all safeties. So he's playing well. It's just lacking that consistency is what inevitably hurts Brian Cook's grade here. Because, yeah, he does really well, only 182 yards allowed on 21 receptions, but he's also 30th overall in the slot, so he's having some success. He's not having success in other ways. The lack of physicality at the line of scrimmage, a lot different than his confidence and physicality when he's playing more that traditional free safety role and having to make a play on a runner, having to make a play on a pass catcher, on a running back, etc. So you want to figure out where to put him, where he's going to have the most success. I think having Jordan Battle allows you to play Battle closer to the line. I think you get Kyle Duggar, who has, again, been on sort of the downward trend from his peak when he was in New England. But he's got like that dime linebacker stature. He can be a box safety for you as well, so he can help you with some of the bigger boxes while maintaining some athleticism, and just keep Brian Cook as that center field guy. I think that's inevitably the best way to use this group. But what they need is that breakout number 2 corner that's going to raise this group into the top 20. And if they can't find it this season, then they are going to be a bottom 7 cover group that is just going to have offenses attack them away from DJ Turner, and Hill, Davis, and Davis, Newton, and Jasir Taylor are just going to be running around like chickens with their heads cut off, running down open receivers, and offenses will just pick them apart and ignore one side of the field because they won't be able to properly cover that one side of the field, even with DJ Turner handling what's going on one side or the other. So this is my 30th ranked defense, tier 6 defensive coaching, 26th pass defense, 30th run defense, because really outside of that front 4 defensive line, they don't have much going on anywhere else. It's the front 4 and it's DJ Turner, and it's just a bunch of question marks and inconsistencies elsewhere. Now we take a look at their schedule, however, and they do have the third easiest strength of schedule with a .450. Their Vegas over-under is 9.5, and I actually have it as a push. Because before their bye week, those first 5 games, they got the game against Miami. They start against Tampa. It's 5 winnable games. Now, I keep harping back at the lack of preseason preparation that this team goes through. So for me, I'm going, yeah, they could win all 5 of those games, but there's also a world where they're 1-4 going into the bye week and no one is surprised. Because like Tampa, Houston, Pittsburgh, and Jacksonville, those aren't going to be pushover games by any means. Miami might be one, but you could be going into that game 0-4, going on the road to Miami, and who knows what happens when you're on the road, right? And then they come out of the bye week. Baltimore is really the only team in their division that I have little confidence they can beat, just because they do lack so much consistency, and I think Baltimore matches up well against them. But other than Baltimore and that one game against Kansas City, they have a very, very good schedule here where they could win. They could theoretically be 14-3. They could be 14-3 as easily as they're 5-12. And I think that is unfortunately their range, is 5 to 14 wins. And to have such a wide range like that speaks, I think, to all the things I was saying about the process they go through in getting week-to-week preparation, preseason preparation from their coaching staff that is just horrific. Because you shouldn't be going into this with this roster with this little confidence that they can't get 10 wins. It's like, man, they're barely going to be 500 with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Dexter Lawrence. Like, what? It's just crazy. Like, Miami, Cleveland twice, New Orleans at home, Tennessee at home. Those are wins. They will get those. The Colts and Carolina both on the road. Houston on the road. Washington on the road. Yikes. They are my 21st overall team, 32nd head coach, 30th defense, but the 8th best offense. And I think that's what matters, is that they can build around this offense, hopefully at least get some wins. But I think inevitably the coaching and the defense is dragging them down into the levels of not being a top 20 team. And there it is, my number 21 team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Thanks for watching, guys. What a hot and cold team. If they just had some better coaching, they would be top 10. But it's amazing what being terribly coached can do to a great roster. I don't know really what else to say to you, Bengal fans. I feel bad for you, but I will see you guys with the next video next time.